stop. Whatever you are doing right now, stop. This is not for everyone listening, it is for you. You have been carrying something quietly for far too long, and the people around you have not seen it because the shape of it does not always look like pain from the outside. They see you functioning. They see you answering. They see you moving through the day with a face that still knows how to stay composed. But they do not see the private pressure that rises in your chest when the room goes quiet, or the way your body tightens when you realize you are still waiting for something that has not yet arrived. You have been asking a question no one has been able to answer without sounding shallow. Why does it feel as if something is near and still not here? Why do you keep sensing a door, even when the hallway looks empty? Why does your heart react before your mind can explain anything at all? Stay with me, because by the end of this, you are going to recognize the signs that have been following you, the pattern beneath them, and the reason this message found you at this exact hour. By the time we close, you are going to understand why certain moments have repeated, why certain pressures have grown heavier, and why the silence around you has not been abandonment, but preparation. You are going to see why the same kind of exhaustion keeps touching the same place in your life. You are going to recognize why your spirit has felt awake in ways your circumstances have not yet matched. And before this ends, there is a declaration I am going to speak over you that will not feel like information. It will feel like recognition. This reached you by appointment, not by accident. There are messages that do not arrive because you searched for them, but because your inner life finally came to the point where it could receive what it has been asking for in private. Something has been happening to you, and I need you to hear that without resistance. It may have started as a small uneasiness, a subtle alert, a sense that your days were ordinary on the surface and charged underneath. You may have noticed that your sleep has not been the same, that you wake at the same hour with no obvious reason, and that the moment your eyes open there is already a pressure in your chest, as if your spirit was active before your body returned. You may have felt strange waves of emotion moving through you without a clear cause, grief that did not belong to the present hour, tenderness that came out of nowhere, or a sudden stillness that interrupted a day you thought was under control. You may have found yourself revisiting old conversations in your mind, and the words that once seemed important now feel thin, almost distant, almost unable to carry the weight they used to carry. Attention. You need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. The same names can still appear in your memory, but the emotional charge is no longer the same. You may have seen repeating numbers, repeated timing, repeated encounters, repeated phrases, as if life itself has been tapping the same place again and again until your attention finally turned toward it. Do not dismiss these things. They are not random clutter. They are not proof that you are losing your mind, and they are not signs that you are failing to hold yourself together. They are evidence that something inside you is becoming more sensitive to what is real. The signs are not the problem. The signs are the message. They appear when something in you is ready to notice what your old pace could not notice before. When your inner world is no longer willing to stay asleep just because your outer world still looks familiar. Take a breath with me. Let your shoulders settle for a moment. If even one of those signs has been pressing on you lately, type 888 in the comments and then come back to me. 888 is the frequency of overflow, the signal that what has felt too long, too heavy, too delayed is not empty but approaching. But there is something beneath these signs, and I want to walk you into it carefully, because the layer under the layer is where clarity begins. Beneath those signs is one single pattern, and once you see it, you stop calling every ache a mystery. The pattern is not that you are being punished. The pattern is that you have lived for too long in a state of over-translation, always reading the room, always measuring the mood, always adjusting yourself before anyone asked you to. You learned to become fluent in everyone else's signals, and in the process, you became quiet toward your own. The pattern is that you have been trained to wait for permission from conditions that never had the authority to decide your worth. You have been treating delay as if it were a verdict, when in truth, delay has often been a corridor. The pattern is that you keep standing at the edge of your own becoming and calling it caution. You keep calling it wisdom when it is really a habit of shrinking. You keep calling it patience when it is really fear dressed in a respectable coat. And because this pattern has repeated in different forms, it has touched many parts of your life. It has touched your relationships, where you say less than you feel. It has touched your work, where you do more than you are credited for. It has touched your private prayers, where you have learned to soften your own longing before you even speak it aloud. You have tried to blame yourself for the repetition, but repetition is not always proof of failure. Sometimes repetition is the place where life reveals the architecture underneath your choices. You were not built to live inside constant self-suppression. You were not created to keep apologizing for the size of your own awareness. The cost of this pattern has been quiet, but it has been real. Fatigue that settles in the bones, hesitation that slows the hand, and a kind of inner dimming that makes even good things feel farther away than they are. But I need to go deeper than the pattern, because the root of this is older than the last season, and it can only be named through an image that carries it honestly. Imagine a threshold in an old house, one that has been crossed for years by the same family, the same voices, the same habits, the same expectations. The wood has held the weight of countless steps. The frame is familiar, the doorway is known, but over time, someone quietly narrowed it. Not with a hammer, not with an announcement, with repetition, with caution, with the unspoken decision that no one needs to move too freely here, with the belief that what enters must be controlled and what leaves must be measured. So the passage that was once open begins to feel guarded, and the very place meant for coming and going starts to feel like a place of restraint. That is what happened in your inner life. A doorway that was meant for movement became a place of hesitation. A place that was meant for passage became a place of surveillance. And because this narrowing happened slowly, you learned to adapt to it as if it had always been normal. You began to lower your own voice before anyone else could. You began to anticipate disapproval before it arrived. You began to carry your desires through a narrow frame, careful not to disturb what had no right to rule over you. No one may have stood in front of you and said, "Be smaller," but something in the environment of your life taught that lesson anyway. Maybe it was a home where love had conditions. Maybe it was a room where feeling too much was inconvenient. Maybe it was a season when your honesty met silence and your spirit learned that silence could be safer than visibility. So now, even when you stand at the edge of what is opening, part of you still checks the frame first. Part of you still asks whether you are allowed to expand. Part of you still waits for the old narrowing to release its grip before you move. But the threshold is remembering what it was made for. It is remembering that passage is its purpose, not restriction. It is remembering that the frame is not the master, and the way through is still there. And here is the deeper mercy. What was narrowed by fear can be widened by truth. What was trained into caution can be retrained into trust. What was silenced can begin to answer again. You are not trying to invent a new self from nothing. You are returning to the part of you that was never meant to live compressed. If that image has landed in you, if you can feel that old doorway in your own life, type the words "I see it" in the comments, and then come back to me. Let the recognition seal where it just touched you. Let your fingers confirm what your spirit has already understood. And now stay with me, because the threshold does not only speak of what was lost, it also speaks of what returns when you stop guarding what was never yours to guard. What returns is not pressure. What returns is not performance. What returns is movement. The door begins to open from the inside, which means you do not have to force it open by strain. You do not have to earn the right to cross. You do not have to become someone else before you are allowed to walk through what has been waiting for you. This is the return, not a frantic list of things to fix, but a quiet restoration of passage. The same places that once felt tight begin to breathe again. The same heart that learned to brace begins to soften without collapsing. The same will that was trained to defer begins to recognize itself as authorized. You do not need to build this from scratch. You do not need to manufacture courage from exhaustion. You do not need to prove to anyone that your longing is legitimate. Your task is simpler and deeper than striving. Your task is to receive what has been arriving while you were still calling it distant. There is a way of living that belongs to this season. It is not frantic, it is not noisy, it does not beg for proof every 5 minutes. It receives a sign and remains steady. It hears a confirmation and does not shrink back from it. It feels the door open and steps forward without demanding that the whole future be visible first. You can begin there. You can begin by noticing where your body relaxes when you stop trying to force every answer. You can begin by telling the truth about what you feel without dressing it in defensiveness. You can begin by letting one honest yes remain a yes, and one honest no remain a no. And because this is a return, there are simple practices that matter now, not as burdens, but as anchors. The first is what I call the morning seal. Before the noise of the day collects around you, sit still for a brief moment and speak your own name with reverence, as if you are acknowledging a life that heaven has not forgotten. Do not rush past that moment. Let your breathing slow. Let your mind arrive. Let your inner threshold remember that it is open. The second is what I call the frequency audit. Once during the day, ask yourself which voices are narrowing you and which voices are widening you. Ask which conversations leave you smaller and which ones leave you clearer. Ask which thoughts make you hide and which thoughts make you stand upright. This is not self-analysis for its own sake. This is stewardship of the doorway. You are learning to tend what was once neglected. You are learning to recognize pressure without worshipping it. You are learning to notice the difference between urgency and guidance. You are learning that not every loud thing is true and not every quiet thing is absent. Stay with this because there is one more layer before the seal is spoken. If something in this message has confirmed what your spirit already knew, let your like be your amen without words, not as a metric, as an agreement that what was named here was named correctly. Someone came to mind while I was speaking, and that is not random. It may be someone quietly tired, someone carrying more than they admit, someone who has learned to look capable while feeling overlooked, or someone whose posture still holds a private ache no one else has named. It may be someone secretly seeking, someone who keeps watching the door but pretending not to care whether it opens. Someone who has become accustomed to delay and now almost distrusts hope itself. It may be someone who looks strong on the outside and tender in the places no one can see. Send this to that person, not as a recommendation, as a delivery. The same way it came to you, by appointment, let it reach them with the same precision, the same mercy, the same timing. Before this closes, type the words "I am the one" in the comments. Not as a wish, not as a hope, as a confirmation. Let your fingers write what your spirit is finally ready to carry. Take a breath with me. Let that settle. There is no need to rush the seal. You are being confirmed in places that were once confused. You are being steadied in places that were once shaken. You are being gathered into yourself where you were once scattered. You are not late. You are not forgotten. You are not disqualified by the length of the waiting. You are being met in the exact place where your heart learned to brace, and that place is becoming a place of peace. You are being restored where you were narrowed. You are being strengthened where you were tired. You are being opened where you were taught to close. Right now, all across the world, others are receiving this same recognition in their own quiet way. Some are hearing it in a room with the lights low. Some are hearing it while carrying private grief. Some are hearing it with tears they did not expect. And though your paths are different, the witness is the same. You are part of a gathering that does not announce itself loudly, and that is exactly why it is real. It is sealed. Take one more breath, because what has been spoken over you is not fading, and what has been recognized in you is not going to be lost in the noise of the next hour. You are still standing at the threshold, but now you are standing differently. You are no longer standing there as someone asking permission from a door that was already meant to open. You are standing there as someone who has remembered their own name inside the silence, and that changes the entire atmosphere around your life. There are moments when the soul does not need more instruction. It needs agreement. It needs the quiet, exact recognition that what it has been sensing is not imagination, not weakness, and not a mistake. It needs the kind of witness that does not argue with its ache, but names it correctly and leaves it less alone than before. That is what this closing is for. Not to add another layer of pressure, not to hurry you into a feeling, not to decorate what is already happening. It is to gather all the scattered pieces of what you heard, what you felt, what you almost resisted, and what you finally allowed to land, and to hold them together long enough for your heart to know they belong together. Because the truth is simple. Even if your journey has not been, the signs were not random, the pattern was not your fault. The narrowing was not your identity, and the return is not something that depends on your perfect performance. You do not have to become impressive for this to remain true. You do not have to become louder for this to matter. You do not have to prove that you were worthy of what has been unfolding. You only have to remain present to the place where your own spirit finally stops flinching from the light. There is a deep peace in that kind of arrival, because it doesn't ask you to manufacture another life from nothing. It asks you to cease collaborating with the lie that you were built to live compressed. It asks you to stop calling your own expansion dangerous simply because it is unfamiliar. You may have spent years making yourself manageable to other people's expectations. You may have spent years learning how to bend without breaking, how to stay useful without being seen, how to remain faithful to everyone else's comfort, while your own interior quietly starved. But none of that is the final word over you. The final word over you is not limitation. The final word over you is not delay. The final word over you is not the history of what stayed closed. The final word over you is the living truth that the threshold is still yours, and that the door responds to truth more than it responds to fear. So you can stop negotiating with what has already been shown to you. You can stop returning to the old argument that says your instincts are too much, your longing is too large, your discernment is too sensitive, your hope is too risky. Those sentences were never holy. They were only familiar, and familiar is not the same as true. This is why the quiet inside you has mattered so much. It has been teaching you how to tell the difference between what repeats because it is real and what repeats because it is an old atmosphere that has not yet been challenged. That difference is sacred. That difference is power. That difference is the beginning of freedom. When you understand that difference, you stop interpreting every pause as denial. You stop interpreting every delay as rejection. You stop interpreting every closed moment as if it were the final architecture of your life. Instead, you begin to see that some closures are only temporary coverings over a passage that is still being prepared for your feet. That is why your spirit has been restless in the exact places where your life has looked calm. The restlessness was not rebellion, it was recognition. It was the part of you that knows there is more refusing to be sedated by less. It was the part of you that refuses to let appearance replace truth. And now, because this recognition has settled in you, there is a holy gentleness available to you that was harder to reach before. You do not need to force the next step to prove that you believe. You only need to honor the step that is already in front of you. The next step may look small to the outside eye. It may look like a decision to speak more honestly. It may look like an act of resting without guilt. It may look like no longer returning to the place where your spirit keeps being reduced. It may look like finally trusting the quiet warning you have ignored too many times. It may look like letting your life be guided by what is true instead of what is merely tolerated. Do not despise the small step. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is to stop calling your own obedience insignificant. Sometimes the smallest act of alignment changes the entire flow of a season. And if you feel that something in you is still hesitant, do not shame the hesitation. Listen to it. The hesitation is often the final echo of an old narrowing. It is the last voice of a room that no longer deserves authority over your future. You do not have to fight it harshly. You only have to outlast it with clarity. Clarity is patient. Clarity is steady. Clarity does not panic when the old atmosphere makes one final attempt to speak. Clarity simply remains, and by remaining, it proves that the doorway has changed. You have already changed more than you know. There are places where you used to collapse inward, and now you notice. There are moments where you used to agree too quickly, and now you pause. There are conversations where you used to betray your own knowing, and now you feel the cost of that betrayal immediately. That is not small, that is maturity. That is the soul learning to keep its own company. It is a sacred thing to become someone who can no longer be easily convinced away from what is true. Not rigidly, not defensively, but faithfully. There is a difference, and you are learning it. You are learning how to remain soft without becoming porous. You are learning how to remain loving without becoming lost. You are learning how to remain open without surrendering your boundary. That kind of learning changes the atmosphere of a life. It changes the way you enter a room. It changes the way you leave a conversation. It changes the way you wake in the morning and answer the first thought that tries to define your day. It changes the way you carry disappointment, because disappointment is no longer the ruler. It becomes only a passing weather pattern over a deeper weather that is already anchored. You are not being asked to deny what hurt. You are being asked to stop enthroning it. You are not being asked to pretend the waiting did not cost anything. You are being asked to recognize that even the cost has not exhausted the purpose. Something in you has been made finer by what it has had to survive. That is not the same as saying pain was good. Pain is not the treasure. But sometimes the tenderness that survives pain becomes the very place where truth is heard most clearly. Sometimes the quiet after struggle becomes the only place where the voice of recognition can be recognized at all. And if that is where you are, then there is no reason for shame. There is only reason for honesty. Be honest about the place where your heart still trembles when it thinks of opening. Be honest about the place where you still expect disappointment. Be honest about the place where you are still learning how not to brace for impact before the impact even arrives. Honesty does not weaken the threshold. Honesty clears it. What you are carrying now is not a burden to show off, and it is not a burden to hide. It is a responsibility to honor. It is a moment to live carefully, because what is being restored in you is delicate at first. though it is stronger than it looks. Do not rush the unfolding. Do not insult the process by demanding instant proof of what has already begun. There are roots that deepen before branches appear. There are doors that open inward before anyone sees the handle move. There are seasons when the visible part of the miracle is only the calm that arrives before the new step becomes obvious. You may not yet be able to name everything that is changing, but you can already feel the direction of it. You can feel that certain fears are losing their grip. You can feel that old permission structures are weakening. You can feel that your appetite for truth is no longer negotiable. You can feel that your inner life is refusing to stay small just because smallness was once easier to survive. That refusal is not arrogance. It is life. Let it remain simple. Let it remain clear. Let it remain unforced. You're not trying to perform a transformation for anyone else. You are not trying to create a testimony out of pressure. You are simply agreeing with what has already been stirring in the deepest place of you. And here, at the end of this speaking, I want to leave you with one last recognition. The same one who met you in the ache is also steady in the opening. The same presence that exposed the narrowing is also faithful in the widening. The same mercy that revealed the pattern is also patient in the return. So you do not stand alone in this, not in the signs, not in the pattern, not in the root, not in the return, not in the moment of choosing truth over old compression, not in the silence after the words have landed and your heart begins to answer from a place deeper than thought. You are being accompanied more closely than you know. You are being held more gently than fear can measure. You are being led with a precision that does not need to announce itself loudly to be real. And because that is true, you can walk forward without performing certainty. You can move with reverence instead. You can move with humility. You can move with the steady confidence of someone who has heard the door respond. The threshold is open. It is sealed. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you. And strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.